The Monday morning rush filled the towering glass headquarters of Romano Global Holdings as hundreds of employees hurried through the open plan office. Among them was 26-year-old Emma Carter, one of the company's hardest-working financial analysts. Emma had earned a reputation for honesty and dedication, often staying late to complete projects while avoiding office politics. Unfortunately, her department director, Richard Holloway, had mistaken her quiet nature for weakness. For months, Richard had made inappropriate comments, invaded her personal space, and used his authority to make her uncomfortable. Emma endured the situation because she desperately needed the job to support her widowed mother and younger brother. Every complaint she considered filing was met with fear that no one would believe a junior employee over one of the company's highest-ranking executives. That afternoon, Richard called Emma into his luxurious office, claiming he wanted to discuss an important promotion. Hoping her hard work had finally been recognized, Emma entered carrying her project files. Instead of discussing business, Richard walked around his desk and stood far too close. He made another inappropriate remark and reached toward her shoulder. Despite her obvious discomfort, Emma stepped back and quietly asked him to stop. Richard only smiled, believing his position made him untouchable. Before he could move closer, the office door suddenly opened. A tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit stepped inside with calm confidence. His sharp eyes immediately took in the situation. The room fell silent. Richard turned angrily. "Who are you?" he demanded. The stranger looked directly at him and said in a calm, controlled voice, "Step away from her, now." Richard laughed, unaware he was speaking to Marco De Luca, a powerful man whose influence extended far beyond the corporate world and who had spent years trying to leave a dangerous past behind to build a legitimate business empire. Marco walked toward Emma, placing himself between her and Richard without raising his voice. His expression never changed, but the authority in his presence filled the room. "No employee should ever fear coming to work," he said. Emma looked at him in surprise, wondering why a complete stranger had chosen to help her when everyone else had stayed silent. Outside the glass office walls, dozens of employees noticed the confrontation and quietly gathered. Richard, embarrassed in front of his staff, tried to laugh it off and claimed everything had been a misunderstanding. Marco calmly replied, "If that's true, the security cameras and witness statements will confirm it." Richard's confident smile disappeared instantly. He had forgotten that the company's executive offices were monitored for security purposes. Within minutes, the company's chairman arrived after receiving an urgent call from security. As the chairman greeted Marco with unexpected respect, Richard's face turned pale. He suddenly realized this wasn't an ordinary visitor. The chairman quietly informed everyone that Marco De Luca had recently become the company's largest private investor and newest board member. Emma stood speechless as the entire office fell silent. Richard's career, reputation, and carefully hidden behavior were about to face the truth, and Emma's life was about to change forever. The entire office stood frozen as the chairman personally welcomed Marco De Luca and escorted him into the executive conference room. Richard Holloway's confident smile had vanished. For the first time in years, he looked nervous. Emma quietly stood near the doorway, still trying to understand why one of the company's newest board members had stepped in to protect her. Marco turned toward the chairman and spoke calmly. "Before today's investment meeting begins, there's something far more important that needs our attention." He explained what he had witnessed only moments earlier and requested that security preserve every recording from the executive floor. The chairman immediately instructed the security department to secure all surveillance footage before anyone could alter or delete it. Richard interrupted, insisting that everything had been misunderstood and accusing Emma of exaggerating the situation. Marco looked directly at him and replied, "The truth doesn't fear evidence." Within minutes, security officers confirmed that the cameras had recorded the entire encounter. Several employees also quietly admitted they had seen Richard behave similarly toward other women over the past 2 years, but had been too frightened to report him. Emma was invited into the boardroom where she nervously shared her experience. Her hands trembled as she described months of unwanted comments, intimidation, and fear of losing her job if she spoke out. As she talked, other female employees found the courage to step forward. One by one, they revealed similar experiences, each confirming that Richard had repeatedly abused his authority. The room became silent as the board realized the problem was far worse than anyone had imagined. Richard desperately tried to defend himself, claiming everyone had conspired against him, but the surveillance footage and witness statements told a different story. The chairman immediately suspended him from all duties pending a formal investigation and informed him that law enforcement would also review the evidence. Richard left the room surrounded by security officers, no longer protected by his title or influence. After the meeting ended, Emma thanked Marco for helping her. He smiled gently and replied, "You protected yourself the moment you told the truth. I only made sure someone listened." Emma asked why he cared about a stranger. Marco looked out the window before answering. "Years ago, I made many mistakes. I can't change my past, but I can choose what kind of man I become today." Those words stayed with Emma. For the first time in months, she walked through the office without fear. Employees who had once remained silent now greeted her with respect, and many apologized for not supporting her sooner. Meanwhile, news of the investigation spread throughout the company, proving that no position of power should ever place someone above accountability. Emma didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of a journey that would transform both her future and Marco's life forever. Over the following week, the investigation uncovered years of misconduct that no one had dared expose before. The company's ethics committee worked alongside investigators, reviewing security footage, emails, and witness statements. Richard Holloway's influence disappeared almost overnight as more evidence confirmed a pattern of abuse and intimidation. Several employees who had resigned years earlier returned to provide testimony, explaining that they had left promising careers because they felt powerless against someone with so much authority. Emma attended each meeting with quiet determination. Although speaking about her experience was painful, she realized that telling the truth had given courage to many others. Marco remained by her side, not as a bodyguard or a hero, but as someone who believed that no person should ever stand alone when facing injustice. One afternoon, Emma visited Marco's private office to thank him once again. Looking around, she noticed there were almost no personal photographs, only a single framed picture of an elderly woman. Curious, she asked who she was. Marco smiled softly. "My mother," he replied. "She raised me alone after my father died. Before she passed away, she made me promise that no matter how powerful I became, I would always protect people who couldn't protect themselves." He paused before continuing. "I didn't always keep that promise. Years ago, I was surrounded by violence and fear. I thought respect came from making people afraid. My mother believed real respect comes from helping people feel safe." Emma quietly listened, finally understanding why Marco had stepped into Richard's office without hesitation. He wasn't trying to prove his power. He was trying to honor a promise. A few days later, the board officially voted to remove Richard from the company permanently. At the same meeting, they announced sweeping workplace reforms, including stronger reporting systems, mandatory ethics training, and independent employee protection policies. The chairman publicly thanked Emma for her courage and asked her to help develop the company's new employee well-being program. The announcement received a standing ovation from the staff. As employees applauded, Marco quietly watched from the back of the room. He knew this victory wasn't his, it belonged to Emma and everyone who had found the courage to speak. As the applause echoed through the building, Emma walked over to Marco with tears in her eyes and smiled. "You didn't just save my career," she said. "You helped change this entire company." Marco smiled back. "No," he answered. "You changed it the moment you refused to stay silent." Neither of them realized that this partnership, built on trust and respect, was about to become something much deeper than either had imagined. Months passed and Romano Global Holdings became a very different company. Employees who had once worked in fear now walked through the office with confidence, knowing their voices would be heard. Emma was promoted to Director of Employee Relations, where she led new programs focused on workplace respect, mentoring, and employee well-being. Her story inspired many people, not because she had been rescued, but because she had found the courage to speak when it mattered most. Every new employee learned that integrity would always matter more than position or power. The company's reputation grew stronger than ever, attracting talented people who wanted to work in an environment built on trust. Marco often visited the headquarters, but he never asked for praise. He preferred watching from a distance as the culture slowly transformed into the kind of workplace his mother had always believed should exist. One evening, after a successful charity fundraiser hosted by the company, Emma found Marco standing alone on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city lights. She walked beside him and smiled. "You always disappear before anyone can thank you." Marco laughed quietly. "I spent too many years believing power meant people feared me. These days I'm happier. When people don't even notice I'm there." Emma looked at him thoughtfully. "You're different from the man people talk about." Marco nodded. "People remember my past. They don't always see the man I'm trying to become." Emma gently replied, "The past explains who we were. It doesn't decide who we become." Those simple words stayed with Marco. For the first time in years, he felt that someone saw him not for his reputation, but for his character. A year later, Romano Global Holdings received a national award for creating one of the safest and most respectful workplaces in the country. During the ceremony, the chairman invited Emma and Marco onto the stage. Standing before hundreds of business leaders, he said, "This company didn't change because of new policies alone. It changed because two people chose courage over silence." The audience rose in a standing ovation. After the ceremony, Marco asked Emma if she would join him for dinner, not as a board member and an employee, but simply as two people who had learned to trust each other. Emma smiled warmly and accepted. As they walked out of the building together, reporters asked Marco what real strength meant to him. He paused before answering. "Real strength isn't making people afraid of you. It's making them feel safe." Emma smiled beside him, knowing those words perfectly described the man he had become. Together they walked into the evening, leaving behind not a story of fear, but one of courage, respect, redemption, and hope. True strength is protecting others, not controlling them. Speaking the truth can inspire others to find their own courage. Respect, integrity, and kindness create a legacy far greater than power alone.